500,000. That's how many lines of code, or just about, are in the WordPress core. WordPress being the CMS system that nearly 25% of the internet runs on. Hey, how's it going? It's Brandon Devanich from i3dTHEMES with this week's interactive, number 36, where we share what we are passionate about and what we've been working on here this week in the i3dTHEMES Design and Code Labs. So yeah, WordPress is a huge system. Has great functionality, but you can imagine, once you get past 100,000 lines of code that have to render in order to make the page load properly, it's going to take a little bit of time for that page to be served out to the end user. And so compared to a static website, WordPress pages load slower. And we're talking in the magnitude of maybe a second slower than a static website. And so that's one of the things that you need to consider, is that when you have a WordPress site, the very first thing that you should look at is making sure that you are running a smoking fast web server. And I'm pleased to say that we've finished another migration of one of our hosting platforms, and now those customers that were on that web server are now experiencing a much faster experience load time for their websites, which is really important because like 25% of our web hosting clients are using WordPress as well. And so that's the very first thing that you should do, is make sure that you are running a stupidly fast web server. That's what you can do right off the bat. The trouble with shared hosting platforms is that many hosting customers or hosting companies tend to cram a lot of people, a lot of websites onto a single server unit, unless of course you're using cloud, and cloud is really expensive. So in order to make their money, they cram a lot of people, and that can really slow down the server. Even if they are running like a really high-end server unit, the more requests that you put on a server, the more database intensive applications, it's going to slow things down. Well, I'm pleased to say that our servers are running smoking fast now, and we're really excited to have them upgraded. When we started web hosting, I'm going to say it's just about 10 years ago, providing web hosting as a service, WordPress really wasn't a big thing yet. And they didn't have 500,000 lines of code in the core system. That's sort of built up over time. And so, most of the websites that were hosted were static websites. And so the hardware reflected that. Well, now, of course, we're 10 years later, and the hardware needs to be, different. And it needs to have a faster CPU. It needs to have more RAM. The drives are solid state drives, so there's no spinning going on like your hard drive for your PC. So it's super awesome that we have this new hardware that makes the websites just load that much faster. And the other thing you can do, one of the other things, is you can set up a caching plugin for WordPress, and that can help the initial delivery of the web page. The trouble with, if you just focus in on that and not the third component to making sure your web page loads fast, which is making sure it's optimized for Google PageSpeed, or just PageSpeed in short. If it's not optimized for PageSpeed load and the rendering of the page, you're missing out, basically. And so what happens is that there are a number of aspects to how fast your page loads. There's something called render blocking resources. There's optimization of images. There are, minification. These are all different components to making sure that your web page loads as fast as possible. Now, Google provides a tool to us called Google PageSpeed Insights. You can run your web page through it and see what your score is. It's a score out of 100. Basically, it's like going to school. If you are below 50, goodness gracious, you've got a bit of a fail going on. In fact, actually below 70 is pretty much considered a fail as far as Google PageSpeed or the PageSpeed metric is concerned. If you can get in the green, which is 85 or above, you're doing very well, okay? And think about it like this. Everybody's going to be concerned about the load time of their web page at one point or another. Your competition, if you're trying to compete with other people, they're going to be looking at it as well. And if they have a faster load time for their web pages, Google is more likely to position them better. If all things else considered equal, your content, your incoming links, your social media activity, your responsive nature, your engaging nature of your content, if it's all the same, but their web page is faster, their website is faster, either through the server load time or the how things are rendered on the page, and it just comes up like that. If they're faster, they got a better Google PageSpeed score, you better believe that Google is going to be giving preference to them. So we developed this application called Accelerator. And you probably see it a little bit here on the screen behind me here. That's our landing page for Accelerator. It's a website plugin that you can throw on top of your traditional website to basically instantly speed up the loading and rendering time and give you a much higher Google PageSpeed score. We say you're going to get 85, but in actuality, people are getting 95, 96, 97% for their entire site in just a matter of minutes. It's really a very awesome and powerful little plugin. Well, we decided that we're going to take all that functionality and port it over to WordPress and put it into a WordPress plugin. And so we've been working on that when we haven't been migrating our hosting platforms over to new servers the last few weeks. We've been also working on migrating the functionality from the Accelerator website plugin over to a WordPress plugin. And so we're about 75% done the feature set, and then we're going to be doing a bunch of testing. So we're aiming for a July launch, whether that's the first week or second week or third week in July, but that's where we're aiming for the WordPress plugin version of Accelerator. In the design lab, Colin has been pretty busy. He's telling me that it's because of the size and quantity of projects that he has on his plate right now, it's going to be about 3, maybe even 4 weeks before he takes on new projects, simply because of what he's got going on. And so when he hasn't been working on that, and he hasn't had much time at all, because that's been dominating his time, he's been trying to fit in development time on the cinematic website design, which is his next website template, which uses cinemagraphs. And cinemagraphs are essentially still images. You can picture a picture of me and just my eyes are blinking. That's not a really great example, but if you go to Flixel.com, you'll see cinemagraphs in action. And Flixel, they sell software to make cinemagraphs, but we're going to be developing a website template that takes advantage of that type of image, which is fantastic for storytelling. Now, storytelling is all the rage right now on social media. You can probably imagine. You've probably heard of Instagram stories and Snapchat, and now even Facebook stories. And it's really a fantastic way of getting better engagement, because people love stories. Did I tell you this story about, when Colin and I first started this business? Instantly it triggers I'd like to know more. And so stories are a really big thing in social media these days, and engagement. And if you're in business to sell something, or to offer a service, or you have an organization and you want people to become interested, stories are incredibly important, whether it's on your website or in social media. And so we're going to be developing this website template design that are taking advantage of cinemagraphs, which are fantastic. Little alert came up there. They are fantastic for telling stories. So that's what's been keeping us busy here this week. We hope you've had a fantastic week. And I am going to be writing a blog article next week on the history of PageSpeed and how it has changed over the course of the last 10 years, because we've been doing this web development here for 15 years or more now. And so we've got a history where we can look back on how things were back 10 years ago. And so we have a little bit of insight onto what we really focused in on 10 years ago opposed to what we focus on now. And there's quite a bit of a difference in technicalities. And so I'm going to be sharing that blog post next week. So if you'd like to check that out, we'll probably post that out to Facebook as well as our Google Plus page. And so if you'd like to check that out next week, we should probably have that out on Tuesday. Anyways, thanks so much for joining me. We'll talk to you again next week, and hope you have a fantastic weekend.